Fevered Publishing presents Metal Spies, Shadowfast Action Thriller 1 by Cole Chase. Read by the author.
Chapter 36. Brody Bach, alone in the private compartment toward the back of his Embraer Legacy 650 jet, stabs the last bite of his egg white and spinach omelet and wolfs it down. He shoves the empty plate away and presses the call button for Harwell to join him. His chief of security, a bald man dressed in black, steps through the curtain, looking big and dark against the white leather environs. "Sir? How much longer?" "We'll begin our descent to Seoul in about 40 minutes. "Good, time for the next item on the agenda." "I'll wake her and bring her in." He vanishes through the curtain. Bach looks himself over, wipes his shirt front with the linen napkin, and checks his blonde hair in the wall mirror mounted next to his seat. He likes looking together and alert, especially when his employees are worn or confused. It's part of his "a god among us" image. A short, stocky woman steps hesitantly through the curtain, wearing the neon green Skyhouse polo that non-executive employees wear as a uniform. Her tightly curled hair looks flat on one side and she blinks sleepily. Flight time from Seattle to Seoul exceeds 10 hours, so clearly she was trying to nap, expecting to work when they land. Harwell follows, crowding her. With a heavy hand on her shoulder, he forces her down into the bucket seat across the small table from Bach. "Erica Gomolka," he announces. "Erica," Bach greets her. He offers no smile, no "nice to see you." Normally he hires only attractive women, but Erica has technical expertise that makes her an exception. "Mr. Bach," Erica answers nervously. Her gaze darts around. She takes a breath as if to speak, then goes silent. She has been ordered onto the jet without knowing why, and she's smart enough not to dig her own hole with nervous words. He wants her at a disadvantage because he needs to know. "What happened in Seattle?" Erica looks blank. Her hands find each other and right massage is left. "With regard to the test," Bach prompts. Her expression changes from confusion to a mix of wary relief. "All went as intended, sir." "Oh?" She looks at Bach and blinks, the micro version of a flinch. Yes. At our command, all traffic lights within the grid entered the same phase. If we had done it wrong, the controller monitor unit would have triggered reversion and defaulted to all lights flashing red. Thinking back on it, it went perfectly." She attempts a confident smile. Bach pounces. "Perfectly?" The smile slips away. Her forehead turns moist and her hands wring one another. As far as I am aware..." Bach lets his face show open contempt. "So, you didn't notice a big explosion? You didn't hear a crash in the night?" I did. It was more than a mile away. I didn't think it related to us." Bach scoffs. "Come now, Erica. Who did you tell about the test?" Her eyes widen. "No one." "It's better for you if you're honest." "Mr. Bach, I know what an NDA is. I honor it. I haven't even told the other people on my team." "What do you know about the crash?" "Nothing. I heard tires screech. I heard the bang in the night. Something flashed once above the warehouses. I watched the news that night hoping to learn what happened, but they didn't cover it." "A man died in that accident, Erica." The news shocks her into stillness. "Died?" Bach watches her reaction carefully. "An FBI agent." Her jaw drops. "And then government agents flooded out of a warehouse to help him." She looks around the cramped compartment as if hoping an exit might materialize. "You know what I wonder, Harwell?" Harwell's voice booms behind her. "What do you wonder, sir?" "I wonder how all those agents knew to be on scene for our top secret test." Harwell plays along. It seems to me someone must have told them to be there. Someone? Surely not one of my employees. Would have to be, sir. No one else knew. Erica squirms through all the play acting, and when Bach pins her with a stern gaze, she bursts out, "No, no, no, not me. I don't know anything about any leak. I had nothing to do with it." Harwell steps to Bach's side, and the two of them stare her down. "I swear!" They keep up the silent treatment. Erica's gaze darts back and forth between them. She shrinks further back into her seat. Bach says, "We're cruising at 30,000 feet. Erica looks confused. "No one on the plane except me, Harwell, the pilot, and you." She drops her hands in her lap. He sees her steel herself to take what's next. "We could do anything we want to you, Erica. You're trapped here, you see that, right?" She nods. Harwell booms, "Mr. Bach particularly despises snitches." "I do, Harwell. What's that saying you mentioned?" "Stitches for snitches." "And what would stop us from disappearing Erica somewhere over Korea?" "Nothing, sir. Not one thing." She looks back and forth between the two men and finds no mercy in either gaze. "I have not," she begins, then stops. She swallows, then tries again. "I have not done anything against this company. Mr. Bach, you're brilliant. You know logic and conditional statements. I appeal to you as one engineer to another. Before one acts upon a hypothesis, a scientist musters evidence, proof, checks the methodology. There is no evidence supporting the theory that I leaked your test. You can validate this statement." "You cannot validate a negative statement," Bach counters. "Still," she persists, "neither can you validate your accusation." "You understand, up here no one can stop us from doing what we want to you." "Yes, but I hope you wish only good things for a loyal employee." Bach talks over her. "Do you also understand that your situation is no different on the ground?" Erica swallows. It had not occurred to her. "You've signed an NDA. You've committed to keeping our tests confidential. I am a man of influence. You break your word, you'll never work anywhere near aerospace again." "He's a man of influence," Harwell says. "I am a man of few scruples." He flops a photograph on the table in front of Erica. It shows a small girl wearing a pink winter coat, so bulky her hands don't show from the sleeves and her legs show only from the knees down. Messy wisps of light hair peek out from the hoodie. She perches on the end of a playground slide, looking innocent yet somber. Erica's niece. Erica stares at the picture and does not raise her gaze. "Assure me you're on our team," Bach intones, low. Her words are barely audible over the jet engines. "I always have been. I am." Bach lets the moment soak into her. Then he adds in a slightly softer tone, "You know I have to check, right? The fate of the company rides on this." She dares to look up. "This is a misunderstanding," she tries. Bach leans back and swivels his seat enough to cross his legs, relaxed. "Perhaps that's all it is. I hope so." "When we land," Harwell orders, "we've booked a room for you at the Lotta Hotel. Please stay in touch so we can notify you of your return trip to the States." "Okay. You'll find an extra day's pay in your next paycheck," Bach says, "for your trouble." "Thank you." "Dismissed." She nods. The conversation rocked her, and she struggles to regain her feet. Neither man helps her. She steadies herself on the tall seat back and makes her way through the curtains. After a beat, Harwell drops into her chair across the table from Bach. "Thoughts?" Bach asks. "Innocent," Harwell answers. "Her expressions, her responses, I detected no deception. So we're no closer to knowing who's watching us." "We've eluded the government before, sir." "It's not our government I'm worried about. I'll never face consequences from the U.S. Bach shifts his weight in the seat. But Russia, China, you've hit their milestones. They still believe you're controlling traffic lights by satellite instead of with a local jammer. You've convinced them of your mastery, sir. It must stay that way. Harwell checks his watch just as the seatbelt light bings. Beginning our descent, sir. He stands. You can charm them further in Seoul. Still, Bach says, and breaks into a smile. That was kind of fun, right? Harwell grins. You almost made her shit herself. Bach pulls a face. I'm organic, but not that organic. Harwell laughs. Good one. Chapter 37. Knowing that Ben Sinister would ultimately refund expenses, Quinn books his entire crew into first class on Korean Air. Having rarely traveled first class, he has no idea that flight attendants refill your scotch like Applebee's refills a Diet Coke. In the air halfway to Korea, he lounges in his wide seat next to Danny, full of golden blue and not entirely in possession of his faculties. It still doesn't make sense, he says. Danny stops reading Warrior Wisdom long enough to look expectantly at Quinn. What the man said, Quinn amplifies. He acted like we alone can save the nation. We know that's bullshit, so why us? What's his angle? The man, Danny says, untrustworthy. His word's no good. Who can say what he intends? Then, we just have to dance to his tune? Danny frowns. Not dance, but step down the path alert, eyes open to what comes, then react. Quinn gargles aggravation. I'm a fan of due process. This feels weird. We're flying halfway around the world to trap some guy just because the man said to. We don't know anything about Brody Bach. Yes, we do, Danny says. Quinn's eyebrows rise. You saw him firsthand at Sound Beating. I was, busy. What did you learn? He's a rich asshole. Danny nods. Then we do know something about Brody Bach. Quinn sips more scotch. You're not wrong. They lapse into silence for a bit, each processing his own thoughts. Though I am Korean, Danny says, I follow a Japanese code, Bushido. I've heard the word. You know its meaning? Quinn shrugs. Then he notices Danny gazing at him with more than typical earnestness. Bu, spear. Shi, warrior. Do, way. It is a code for warriors. Quinn nods. Go on. I oversimplify, Danny says, but the code comes down to the reason you get strong is to defend the powerless. So lethal power can be good, if used for the right reason. Quinn sighs. There's the rub. Who knows for sure he is right? Danny looks at him. He has no simple answer. Then Quinn says, this whole bend sinister business, you understood it from the first mention. Danny gestures at his reading. Knights, old-time warriors, I study warrior culture. But if it's a secret group, why give it a fancy name that calls attention? Oh, Danny says, you mean like Shadowfast? Huh? Same thing. Take that back. Danny ticks off the similarities on his fingers. Secret group, authorized by no one, seeking workers who can trust each other, labor in the shadows toward their own ends. Been sinister, Shadowfast, same idea. He puts on an arch-villain voice. You and I are not so different, Mr. Bond. Quinn rolls his eyes. That must be in 10 James Bond films, and I hate it every time. We're not villains, we're the good guys. Are we? Quinn looks back at him. Danny is in soft focus. After some false starts, Quinn manages, It's complicated. I think men are not good. Deeds can be good. Bad man does good deed, it is still a good deed. Quinn tries to process the sentence, but if a good man does a bad deed, he loses the logic. If a deed does good to a bad, it's too much. Maybe this man has had enough good scotch, he says. He stares into the amber fluid in his glass, as if he could divine answers by peering into it. It vibrates with the motion of the jet, but tells him nothing. We're not doing it because the man said to, Danny offers, not realizing Quinn has finished the conversation. We're not? We are doing it hoping he won't send us to jail. There's that. On the little fold-down tray, Quinn pushes the scotch an inch farther away. I just hate being played. I'm pretty sure we're being played. He looks plaintively at Danny. Are we being played? Danny shifts in his seat, which makes his muscles ripple. He opens warrior wisdom again. Step down the path, eyes open. Then react, Quinn says. Within seconds, he falls asleep to the jet's lullaby roar. Chapter 38. Myeongdong District, Seoul, South Korea. In 6th grade, in her elementary school library, Rory discovered Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories. The way the detective observed minutiae, then built deductions from those details, fascinated her. She immediately tried it in her everyday life and even as a girl, mystified her friends with what seemed like mind reading. Anyone could guess the girl beside her had cut through a field to get to school when 3 tiny brambles clung to her stocking. To Rory, it was obvious what the boy on the other side of her had for breakfast when he came to class with a drop of egg yolk on his shirt. When she asked, "Did you have your eggs over easy or sunny side up?" the boy exploded in wonder that she knew he had eggs. When he asked, "How did you know?" she returned a silent, mysterious smile. Gradually, day by day, she learned the power of mystique. After a lifetime of practice, little of it helps her in this Korean barbecue restaurant. Even on a weeknight, tourists and locals pack the place, with a long line of hungry people extending down the plank stairs and out the door to the neon rainbow street, waiting their turn to grill meat tableside. Dark-haired servers in black pants and shirts ferry endless trays of height beer, kimchi, samjang dipping sauce, and raw meat to tables. The place buzzes with the din of patrons raising their voices to talk over one another. This is her first trip outside of English-speaking countries, and the world feels unfamiliar. All the signage means nothing. She doesn't know whether the characters are Korean, Chinese, or Japanese. She can't guess the social status of young women wearing traditional hanbok garb. She can't interpret the stony lack of expression in the businessmen's faces. She can't read the nuances in all the coal-black eyes. It's like manufacturing a cold read while blindfolded and wearing earplugs. Quinn arranged her Queen of Shadows table to one side of the restaurant. She assumes it required hefty bribes because all the tables except hers contain small barbecue pits in the middle. Positioning an ordinary flat table required 3 workers and the intervention of the restaurant's manager. She feels furtive gazes from puzzled patrons as she busies herself moving one card or another in her spread and tucking it here or there. She tries her best to look perceptive and wise as if the spread of cards has deep meaning, but really, she just doesn't want to meet the gaze of people whose language she can't speak and whose mannerisms she can barely read. Under her cloud of dark hair and her black pandemic mask, she hides. Someone pulls out the wooden chair across the table from her and sits. Showtime, she thinks. She plasters on her Queen of Shadows vibe and looks up languidly. She's relieved to see that it's Danny. Wow, you blend. she comments. In a nod to traditional Korean clothes, he wears a heavily embroidered buttoned vest over a white t-shirt. I guess all you Asians do look alike. And all you one-language Americans dumb alike. Dumb is not a verb. For you it is. For Rory and Danny, flipping shit at one another is basically their secret handshake. They smile at one another. Under the noise and bustle of the restaurant, no one else can hear them. You like my jockey? Danny asks. He fingers the red satin fabric, which makes his muscles ripple. Embroidered tigers means military and tradition. It's cool, we could work it into our stage outfits. For tonight's gig, she has chosen traditional tarot cards. Danny watches her scoop up the cards, shuffle them, then spread them in an arc. Brody's coming soon. Rory holds up a hand, displaying 5 fingers in case anyone watches them. She must look like she's giving him a reading. Now how the hell did Quinn know where Brody would eat tonight? Quinn still has his charms, Danny says. He waggles his eyebrows obscenely, if you know what I mean. You gross. Pick 5 cards. Danny points at 5 cards. Each time he points, Rory leaves the card face down but pushes it slightly forward so it sticks out of the arc. Pretend I'm giving you profound instructions. We're killing time until Bach arrives. Which is your favorite K-pop band? Danny asks. Rory snorts. I visited the kiosks and saw the posters and even playing cards. I couldn't tell the bands apart. Trick question, Danny says. You got it right. Weird that here, bangs are still in and guys wear pink lipstick. Oh, but I found some metal, Rory says. Day of mourning, remnants of the fallen. Lots of shouting, Cookie Monster vocals. The intensity is cool, but I like more melody. Yes. At a table in the center of the room, the barbecue flares up in a brief, high flame. Voices exclaim, and a server rushes over. Rory smells charred meat and something fruity. She guesses someone got sloppy with their sauce. Danny asks, How are your forces coming? I'm ready. She points at each of Danny's selected cards. Death, Moon, Knight of Pentacles, Justice, Strength. Danny turns over the last card. It shows a white-robed woman holding shut the jaws of a lion. The caption reads, Strength. Very good. Marked? Can't risk it with a target as smart as Bach. Rory flashes a smile. Stack the deck. Less impressive. Rory feigns supreme confidence. We measure by results, not methods. A clamor arises from downstairs. 2 servers hurry over and make the people in line stand close to the wall, creating a clear passage up the stairs. For the first time, Rory notices Nightboy waiting in line. As the servers push people together, he hovers near a family, giving the visual impression that he's with them. He might be looking at her, but she can't tell through his sunglasses. Then the servers back up and break into beaming smiles and sing-song greetings, with lots of head bobbing. Rory sees a bald head rise up the stairwell, atop a hardened face, atop broad shoulders. It's Bach's head of security, wearing a black sport coat over a black button-up shirt. His face and cheeks look lean, while the outline of his torso resembles a barrel, a sign of a ballistic vest under his shirt. His head swings left and right, noticing everything and everyone. Brody Bach follows him. He wears a soft, unstructured sport coat in a striking periwinkle that sets off his blonde hair perfectly. A couple of thin gold chains and bracelets of beads and shells complement his expensive factory-ripped jeans, giving him an upscale California vibe. As he tops the stairs, he's not alert like his security guy. He's tossing casual orders to the same glasses-wearing, phone-toting functionary who accompanied him to the Shadowfast gig in Seattle. Danny's eyes lock with Rory's. She gives him the nod. Chapter 39. Danny jumps to his feet and shouts a torrent of abuse at Rory in Korean. She tries to look as meek and wide-eyed as she can, while every face in the restaurant turns toward them. Danny keeps yelling. He rudely jabs his finger in her face repeatedly. He makes a fist. On a guy that muscular, the gesture looks menacing. "I'm trying to understand," Rory begins. Danny bellows in Korean, "Sibal!" Then he flips the table explosively. Cards fly everywhere. Rory scoots back on the banquette and lets out a tiny scream. She's not alone. At least 2 other female voices shriek as the nearest patrons scatter from their tables. On the far side of the restaurant, diners stand, and at least 3 of them pull smartphones and start recording. Suddenly, Bach's head of security is there, holding his right hand high and inside his sport coat. "Cool it, buddy," he says to Danny. Danny whirls on him, seething, and adopts a martial arts stance, hands up near chin level. Brody steps forward and says something. Rory masks her surprise because it sounds like fluent Korean. She realizes she's holding her breath, afraid that Brody might recognize Danny from the Shadowfast gig. She breathes and tells herself that's why on stage they wear executioner masks. Danny makes a show of recognizing Brody, doing a double take from the security guy to Bach. Danny lowers his guard slightly and, exaggerating his accent, says, "Brody Bach?" Brody nods and says something in gentle Korean. Danny smiles and references the video from the Shadowfast gig, which has gone viral. "Brody Bach da mah-ah-an." Brody smiles back. He gestures for the security guy to take his hand off his gun. "Yes," Brody says in English. Then he asks a question in Korean. Danny turns grim and answers with a torrent of words, gesturing at Rory, placing his hands on his heart and looking innocent, then finishing with a pantomime of spitting. Brody looks at Rory and asks her something in Korean. At her look of confusion, he switches to English. "Did you accuse this man of cheating on his wife?" Rory folds her hands in her lap. Not precisely. I told him what the card said." Brody laughs. "I think you touched a nerve." He snaps his fingers at the functionary, who hands him a wallet-sized photo of Brody with a pen. Brody autographs the photo and offers it to Danny. Danny takes it, feigning enthusiasm, and they converse in Korean for a few lines. At last, Danny puts his palms together with his fingers pointing up and bows his head in a quick apology to the 2 men. He shoots stink-eye at Rory, then pushes his way to the stairs and leaves. The restaurant patrons, frozen in time during the conversation, burst into a smattering of relieved applause. Brody turns with a modest smile and nods his head, suggesting a bow. The restaurant manager runs up, apologizing profusely. Brody says, "Harwell." And the security guy gets rid of the staff by asking them to fetch beverages. Rory squats under her long skirts and begins picking up tarot cards from the wooden floor. Brody tells the functionary, "Help her." The young man stoops and snatches up cards rapidly, thrusting them into her hands every few cards. A shot of adrenaline courses through Rory as Brody writes her small table. But he didn't spot the microphone attached on the underside. Instead, he notices her folded sign on the floor and picks it up. "Queen of Shadows," he reads aloud. "What have you got going here? Are you a psychic? A medium?" "I'm intuitive," Rory says. "I form impressions and people want to hear them." "Like when stock analysts ask me to predict the future," Brody jokes. "You are famous then? Are you an athlete?" Brody roars with laughter. Even the functionary manages a smile. "Why?" he asks, enormously pleased. "Do I look like an athlete?" He poses with his shoulder blades back and his chest up. I don't know," Rory demurs. "I don't follow sports." "Or the business pages," Brody mocks. A server hurries up with a tall glass of club soda on a tray. Brody snags it without acknowledging the server. By now, she has the cards and the sign back on the table. "Thank you for helping me. May I give you a reading? Free of charge." She catches the flicker of his eyes running down and up her body. Brody shrugs. "You say it's free?" "It's the least I can do." Rory pulls the guest chair into a welcoming position, then seats herself back on the banquette. Harwell clears his throat. "Sir?" he begins. "We'll be fine," Brody says, sitting. "The Russians can wait a few minutes. Keep 'em company. Buy vodka." Harwell nods. He strides darkly toward a set of red curtains. A sign next to the curtains reads, "Private room" in English. Presumably, the Korean characters say the same. Rory busily straightens the deck, getting all the cards face down. "Is there any question on your mind?" she asks. Brody chuckles. "Always. Never." He shrugs. "Do your thing." Chapter 40. The beauty of having to scoop all the cards off the floor is that she stacked them in order, right in front of him, while seeming like she's simply scrambling to get back in business. With the cards all face down, in a single gesture she smooths them across the table in an arc. "Then we shall let the cards interpret your fate. Touch 5 cards, any 5 you want." At the end of the sentence, she looks up to make sure he's following. Their eyes lock. Brody frowns. "Have we met? Do I know you from somewhere?" Rory's mind races, calculating angles. She didn't think he'd catch on this fast. They are more than 5,000 miles from Seattle, where he saw her perform. "Maybe. Do you come to Seoul often?" "I don't think it was in Korea," Brody ponders. Rory pulls a face to dismiss the topic. "Point at 5 cards?" "Sure." Carelessly, Brody touches 5 cards, 2 together and 3 widely spaced. Rory pushes the cards forward, sticking out of the arc. "All right," she says. "Let me get centered, then we'll see what we have." She closes her eyes and waves her hands mystically over the deck. Her fingers make odd shapes above the cards, as if she feels and manipulates unseen energy. With her eyes shut, she notices that the restaurant has returned to its normal buzz and clatter. Then she opens her eyes. Brody looks amused, not really buying the bunkum. She flips the first card Brody touched. It depicts an old man in white robes, traveling with a staff and holding out a lantern. "The hermit," she murmurs. He seeks the path, trying to find the way. The staff represents authority. If you look at the flame in his lantern, you see it is the 6-pointed seal of Solomon. This symbolizes his wisdom. He stands on the peak of the mountain. That is accomplishment. Wisdom, authority, accomplishment. The hermit is you. Brody looks bored. "And so?" "The card faces you right side up. That suggests you have a big decision in front of you, and you must use your wisdom, authority, and accomplishment to find your way. It is a favorable omen. If the card had landed upside down to you, what we call reversed, it would indicate you have lost your way, but you have not. The decision is still before you." Brody smiles. He lifts the card and studies it. Then he drops it to the table and admits, "This is kind of fun." Rory flips the next card. Symbols pack each corner. An angel, an eagle, a bull, a lion. Dominating the card, a wheel fills the center, also covered in additional strange symbols. "The Wheel of Fortune," she explains. "Notice that a sphinx sits on top, a serpent on the bottom. When one is up, the other is down. The wheel turns and they trade positions. This is the card of change. The only thing that's permanent is change, they say. But it is upside down to you, reversed. This means disruption is coming to you." Brody plays along. "What kind of disruption?" "Too early in the reading to say." She glances at him and sees that his expression has changed from mockery to interest. "I weave the entire narrative once we see all the cards." Then let's go. It's a good sign. She half expected him to abandon the read after the first minute. She flips the third card. It shows a tower built upon a peak. The tower had a crown at the top, but a lightning bolt knocks the crown asunder and sets the tower ablaze. Two desperate people have leapt from the tower, plummeting through the flames. Brody frowns. Well, that can't be good. Correct, Rory sighs. The tower stands for ambition built on faulty premises. It means radical change is coming, especially when it combines with the reversed wheel of fortune. That does not have to be bad. Destruction can make way for new things. But in the short term, this does not bode well. Her gaze searches Brody's. Something big is happening in your work, she says. I can't tell yet whether it is your career or your finances. Brody looks serious now. Next card, he urges. He jounces one foot up and down as he leans into the table. It makes his knee and his thigh bounce. Time to present the trap. Quinn saw in Brody's psych profile that he is obsessed with his mother. Manny's online research took them to articles about her mysterious death. She died when Brody was a teenager, but legally a minor. He had some involvement, but the juvenile court sealed the records. Quinn believes Brody murdered his mom, got away with it, and the guilt gnaws at him. In every aspect, Brody thinks and acts like a highly intelligent engineer and businessman, but when he comes to his mother, superstition reigns. Rory flips the card. It shows a queen sitting on a throne. Your mother, she says. Brody's thigh stops bouncing. He swallows. What about her? The woman on the throne holds a scepter and wears a golden crown holding a dozen stars. Stalks of wheat surround her. This is the Empress, Rory says. The scepter indicates power. She wears a spiritual crown, which makes me ask, is your mother alive? No. I'm so sorry. That matches my instinct. This tells me, in feminine beauty, your mother watches you from heaven. Huh. Brody chews his lower lip. That's it? There's more. Rory closes her eyes and tries some Wanda Maximoff gestures over the Empress. I'm getting the phrase, golden boy. Is that what she called you? She catches the micro-expression. His eyes widen slightly briefly, then he covers. Sure, he says, a bit too nonchalantly. But probably every mom calls her son that. Bullshit, Rory thinks. She and Manny got the phrase from an audio tape the FBI had in Bach's file, from when his mom took him to an analyst. But she says, see the wheat stalks? They symbolize abundance. Motherhood, of course, represents birth and fertility. So if we take the cards together, the Hermit, you have a big decision to make. Wheel of Fortune, change is coming regardless of what you do. The Tower, deciding wrong is potentially disastrous, but the Empress, the presence of your mother, indicates nurture, abundance. Some positive, some negative, Brody says. Very balanced, well designed as a systemic framework. How old is the tarot? We don't know. A deck still exists from Italy in the 1440s. The fifth card breaks the tie? Is that how it always works? No, sometimes the cards speak all good or all bad, and other interpreters use 10 cards. I find that adds time, but not insight. Rory pauses as another flame flares up from a random table. Is it hot in here to you? She asks. She reaches up and undoes 2 buttons on her blouse, then fans her face with one hand. What's that? Brody asks sharply. What's what? Your necklace. He leans in and begins to reach toward her throat, then stops himself. Oh, this? Rory extracts the chain from her blouse and displays the pendant to Brody. The circular pendant bears a pentagram, etched in overlapping lines, so it seems the artist formed the 5 points in one continuous stroke. The star sits inside a circle drawn with 3 lines. A tiny red gemstone decorates the tip of each arm, with a larger red gemstone mounted in the center. Brody's jaw clenches. "That is my mother's necklace," he declares. "How is it you have it?" "I got it in the UK. I've had it for years. Perhaps it is similar, but—" "The triple lines, the tiny gems, it's the same." "Please calm yourself," Rory consoles. "I could have chosen many of my necklaces to wear today, but I chose this one. It could be coincidence. But in my trade, I learned to pay attention to such omens. Perhaps she guided my choice, if your beliefs run that way. It implies that your mother is strongly present with us." Brody eyes her sharply. "How do you know about this necklace?" Rory reaches behind her neck and unclasps the necklace. She pours the chain into her palm and offers it to Brody. "I bought it in a vintage store. Quite possibly it was your mother's. I tell you, she is here, and I think she would say, 'It has come back to you to show her blessing on you for saving me from violence. She is proud of you.'" Brody leans back in his chair, caught off guard. His expression softens. "Thank you," he says. He lifts the necklace from her hand and examines the pendant. Then he places it in his sport coat pocket. He scans Rory's face again. "Are you sure we've never met?" "You tell me." Rory removes her N95 pandemic mask, revealing the lower half of her face. She's pretty sure that the mask makes her look more like her Shadowfast persona in the Executioner mask. Brody would have never seen her entire face before. This apparent gesture of openness actually makes her less recognizable. Brody's gaze searches her features. Then he shakes his head. "There's something," he begins, then trails off. Rory waits. She seems patient and polite, but she is letting him stew. She's waiting for the moment to spring Quinn's trap. Chapter 41. "She set the hook," Quinn says. "Shouldn't be long now, one way or the other." Quinn, Manny, and Cooper stand on Myeongdong's shopping street, a block from the barbecue restaurant. The plethora of neon signs overhead paint their faces in strange colors. For a moment, everyone's hair shines neon green, then plunges into purple. A moment later, they bathe in blue. Then a wash of gold swarms over them. Seconds later, they look baptized in blood. Quinn wears white Apple AirPods, listening to the bug under Rory's table. He hands Manny a canvas tote bag. "In case of trouble," he says. Manny has his long hair tucked up under a black knit beanie, so he doesn't look as frightening as he does in Metal Drag. With 2 fingers, he separates the mouth of the tote bag and peers inside. He chuckles. It's not too cold, about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but Cooper slaps together gloved hands as if warming them. "What's the over-under? I'll place money he doesn't tell her." "Later," Quinn orders. "They should be out soon. You take the east alley. I'll take the west." "Easy enough," Cooper answers. He turns and heads off down the street, his dark North Face jacket blending with the other shoppers. He pulls out a phone as he walks. "You," Quinn tells Manny, "are too huge to blend in." "So I've got the other direction." "Should I send the drone up?" Manny asks. "Save the batteries until we're out of options. For now we can leapfrog around him. I'm betting he won't take a car. They're parked blocks from here. If Danny or Night Boys show up, send them each to the next choke points. Danny for the underground." "Sure," Manny says. "Until then?" "Fake like you're shopping." Quinn gives him a mock salute, turns on his heel, and strides away, the opposite direction from Cooper. Manny turns and faces the window while he gets his phone out. He means to look like a shopper. But he stands there a minute before he realizes he's staring into the window of an empty husk where the store went out of business. The global pandemic was hard on this retail district. Shaking his head at himself, he ambles across the street toward Baby Fat. In a typical display of Korea's east-west cross-pollination, a big sign in Korean characters decorates a life-size cardboard cutout of Beyoncé. He kind of hopes he gets to use the bullhorn in the tote bag. Brody sits, unfocused, for several seconds. Then he shakes his head to clear it. So, he says, the final card. He reaches out and flips it himself. For the second time, the Empress sits before him, but this time reversed. "What is this?" he demands. "The same card twice?" "You must listen to me," Rory insists urgently. "I have read cards all my life, and this is unusual, highly unusual. Your mother speaks clearly through these cards. You have a big decision before you. Choosing wrong could mean disaster. Choosing right could mean abundance. The reversed Empress says if you choose wrong, your mother will not approve of you. Do you not feel her presence here?" "I feel her always," Brody says. He crosses himself. "Then let us interpret what she says. I can help you, but I need more detail. What is the big decision before you? What are you about to do?" Brody looks aside, troubled. Twice he opens his mouth to speak, then closes it. "Say it," Rory thinks. Suddenly resolution fills his expression. He faces her, and his hand darts out and seizes her wrist roughly. Through gritted teeth, he growls, "You fucking bitch!" Rory brings a finger to her lips, gesturing for him to shush. "Don't you shush me. I remember where I've seen you, that hair, those eyes." She plunges a hand into the purse beside her on the banquette and brings out a felt pen. As he squeezes her left wrist, she hastily scrawls on the back of a card, then pushes it toward him. He hangs on to her, glowering. He grabs the card with his free hand and reads it. Table, bugged. He jerks his head up, his eyes drilling hers. Now, in a traditional reading, Rory continues smoothly for the unseen listeners, the reader also draws one card. She uses the time that sentence bought her to jot on another card. "They're making me do this. They're on to you." Brody reads it and releases her wrist. He eyes her suspiciously. Silently, he mouths, "Who?" "So," she says, "what do you say? You draw a card for me?" She nods at him, trying to get him to play along. "That sounds interesting," Brody says. His acting is terrible. Compared to his normal tone, now he sounds artificially jovial. "Why not?" She indicates the cards. He pulls one out and flips it. "The Fool." She scrawls across it in letters so large they barely fit. "Run." Thank you for completing Metal Spies, Book 1 of the Shadowfast Trilogy. You can enjoy Book 2, Metal Lies, for free on my YouTube channel, where I post 2 episodes every Tuesday until all 6 episodes are available. Look on YouTube for the Cold Chase Shadowfast playlist. Cliffhanger fatigue? You can find the entire trilogy, Metal Spies, Metal Lies, and Metal Rise, as ebooks and paperbacks on Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and other online retailers. A second Shadowfast trilogy is coming soon. For details, join my newsletter list. To sign up, send your email address to shadowfast@coldchase.media. This is Cold Chase. Chase your adventure.